Welcome back. It's been a big week in US politics, with General Motors filing for bankruptcy, ending an era perhaps of dominance by American car companies. And yesterday's unemployment figures hit a 26-year high of 9.4%. And of course there was President Barack Obama's trip to Egypt for the historic speech on Islam, as well as visits to Buchenwald and the beaches of Normandy for the 65th anniversary of D-Day. With us now is the CEO of the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, Professor Geoff Garrett. Professor Garrett, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Helen.
Now, it has been an incredibly big week, and while the US economy seems to be going to hell in a handbasket, the President takes a trip. His ratings are still extraordinary. Does that surprise you?
Well, the interesting thing I think about the President is in the US he's more popular than his own party, and in the world he's more popular than his country. So we might ask the question, why is that? And I think there are probably two basic answers. The first one is that he really is delivering on the agenda that he outlined in the campaign, and the second one is he has this openness, truth, honesty, all those things that people normally don't associate with politicians. Obama has a big agenda, but he seems to be just pretty transparent about the way he's pursuing it.
So it's not just that he's the young, articulate president, kind of the JFK factor that people talked about in the campaign, yeah, the perfect family, even the cute dog. He's an incredibly eloquent speechmaker. Do you think that is appealing both to the Islamic world and as much as to the West?
I think it's pretty hard not to be impressed when you see him speak. I mean, the set-piece speeches are just fantastic. But I think there are, lurking behind the scenes, there are two challenges. The first one is that the Muslim world is saying, we love what you say, but you've got to back it up with deeds. So there seems to be this tension between soaring oratory and continuity in policy. And then Americans ask a hard-nosed question, that you're out there in the world with this big feel-good agenda, but what's that buying you in terms of concessions from the other side? So maybe the stakes are just continue to get higher and higher for the President.
Well, as he even said, it was just one speech, and that's not necessarily going to achieve a great deal. Is he setting up unrealistic expectations, particularly with the Muslim world?
Well, expectations, of course, on this man have been pretty unrealistic now for a long time. I think there are high expectations in the Middle East. Everyone understands how tough things are, but we shouldn't forget the fact that Obama has now seemingly drawn a line in the sand, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. He said to the Israelis that settlements in the Palestinian territories just can't expand anymore. That has been a no-go area in Israel. We've got a new conservative government in Israel. The Israelis haven't, Obama said it now several times, they haven't budged on their policy.
Yeah, so what happens there? Nothing's going to change, despite him saying it.
Well, what he says, of course, is I'm doing two things. One, I'm being realistic and tough with the Israelis, but I'm also talking with the Muslim world, in particular Iranians and militants in the Muslim world. But I'm holding up the mirror to them as well. I'm telling them that, look, you might have some reasonable grievances, but you can't go around killing civilians and expect to do anything in the world. So can he win on this one? I don't know, but his strategy is a clear one, and he said this himself. I'm going to hold up the mirror to both sides and tell them to look hard at themselves in that mirror.
He's still got extraordinary problems at home. Your economy is still tanking, I guess is an American term. He has problems with Congress. The state of California has been asking the administration for federal loans to guarantee and help the world's seventh largest economy borrow money. Now, will that get through Congress along with the other Obama domestic policy measures?
Yeah, the domestic story, I think, is quite an extraordinary one. Obviously, you know, it was quite amazing this week that people considered this rise in unemployment a victory because there were only 350,000 more people unemployed in a month. I think what's going on in Congress, though, is that...
They're scary figures, though.
Well, 9.4, you'd have to say that US unemployment is going over 10%, and it's going to stay there for a while in an environment where the federal government government is running up debts that make Australia's debts look tiny. You know, America is going to double its public debt to more than 80% of GDP in the next decade. There are 5% deficits into the indefinite future. So Obama has to do three things at once. He has to say he's fiscally prudent while he's doing the biggest bailout in history, and he has a long-term agenda, including universal health care in the US, which looks like it's going to increase costs, not decrease them.
All right, well, one issue that he did take hold of this week finally was that, you know, he says he's not the chairman of General Motors, but he is the 60% owner. Now, can he make that company work? He's been very critical of the way it's been run, but can he, as a politician, do any better?
Well, that's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, the game here with the auto industry, I think, is to try to do what he can to maintain employment in the sector, particularly in the industrial heartland of the US, the Midwest, where Democrats need to win the presidency, but at the same time acknowledge this reality, which is that American cars and American car companies have been uncompetitive, not for 5 years, but for 25 years. What he's doing at the moment is quite interesting, I think. He doesn't want to emphasize, as some people are saying, that this is now government motors. What he's trying to do is to support selling off less competitive parts of the industry to protect jobs. So we had an amazing thing this week, which is President Obama supporting a Chinese purchase of the iconic Hummer MV company. This is quite extraordinary.
Great, let them get into big cars if they want to. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and the irony there, of course, is this is a Chinese investment in the US, and it's not the American government that has concerns, as in the Chinalco case in Australia. It's the Chinese government saying, listen, this is a company that has no experience in automobiles that now wants to buy big gas guzzlers. Does that make any sense for China?
All right, I want to get on to an issue that's very dear to your heart. Very briefly, in the remaining minute, the US Studies Centre is having a national summit in Sydney next week. Now, you've got some very prominent guests. What do you want to achieve with this summit?
Well, we called it Sustainable Globalisation, and that was supposed to be a sort of multifaceted idea to talk both about the impact of the global financial crisis on the sustainability agenda, but also the sustainability of globalisation itself, with so many protectionist impulses out there in the world at the moment. If we can mix international and Australian and academic and business and media leaders, as well as government officials, to chart a way forward, I think that would be a great outcome for us.
Well, I think the website where you can find all the information is at www.ussc.edu.au. Professor Geoff Garrett, good luck with it, and thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much, Helen. It was my pleasure.